Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Podcast Daily. It is Tuesday morning, and it is part two, minus one of our panelists, as Berm heads back after a lovely day at Roosters. Spoiler alert, it's Monday afternoon, and we're just rolling along with more stocks. That's Bill Landis, and I am Austin Ward. Before we get to that, Ohio State's offseason transfer portal activity did kick into high gear on Monday, highest of gear, Bill. And Jake Seibert announced his intentions to leave Ohio State. The backup kicker never quite connected for him. He probably the most amount of headlines he ever made prior to entering the transfer portal was last spring in training camp when he was listed at cornerback, and know that he enjoyed that opportunity. He's a pretty athletic kid, but this is also Ohio State was over the 85. They were going to have to get down anyway, and I'm not sure that any team needs multiple or three scholarship kickers. That's not to make light of this situation for Jake Seibert in any way, but something was going to have to shake out here, and now it already has.
Yeah, when you looked at the roster and thought to yourself, where would some movement happen? Well, one movement had to happen. They're still over the 85. I think they need to get there by May, like the end of May or something like that. I don't know. There's always kind of like a nebulous thing when they have to beat 85. They'll beat 85 when they need to beat 85.
Yeah.
But carrying three scholarship kickers is not a recipe to make sure that you hit your number. He did not kick right in the spring game. They had two opportunities to kick field goals. It was Jaden Fielding and Parker Lewis who did that. It is odd that this Jake Seibert kicked field goals for Ohio State in the national championship game as a true freshman, and then it just never took for a guy who was, I think, thought of by some as the top kicker in his high school class. So a little bit of an odd career arc. He has 3 years remaining. I'm sure someone will take a flyer on him because I think hard kickers in college good kickers in college are hard to come by. But yeah, it gets Ohio State closer to 85. They're at 88 now by my count as of, as you said, Monday afternoon when we're recording this.
Yep. So it's obviously more fun to go out there and portal shop and look at all the best players. And we've said on every show for the last couple of weeks that Ohio State would likely be looking to add depth in the offensive line, but you cannot do that unless there are portal departures as well. That's the unfortunate part of that. There's the window here is 15 days until the end of the month. So we're less than 15 until then. I guess May 1st is the deadline at this point. I thought that was when it was going to open. Then they shifted that to Saturday and April 15th. So portal season is underway. You'll see some more of that for Ohio State. Definitely going out the door. As Bill said, they have to get to that point. They're at 88 scholarships. And then if they want to add, then you would have to see more than 4 players leave Ohio State this offseason. So busy couple weeks. Tough stretch there for Ohio State as the coaches sit down and have those conversations, the tough ones, the not so fun ones, as guys start to plan out their futures and what they need to do. They've got to protect themselves and their own future personal stocks. That is our attempt at a segue back to our original conversation point. It was probably a 4 out of 10. I'd say stock down on that effort for me.
It was pretty solid, I thought. It was good. It was good. It was among the better transitions I think we've had on this podcast. Certainly better than whatever Berm was doing with Sir Mix-a-Lot on Monday. So
good. Then I'll take that and feel good about it. There's a lot more spots on this roster that we didn't get to. So where should we begin?
Man, there are a lot of places to begin. I think maybe I would take a 30,000 foot view for just a second and buy some stock in the idea of this defense taking a real tangible step forward. And they did so last year. I know the end of the year did not go the way people wanted it to, and the big plays were an issue, and I don't disagree with any of that. But if you look at the total body of work, it was a much better season for them defensively. And I think this is tracking toward being an improvement on that. And maybe that is a little bit of fool's gold because of the issues we've discussed with the offensive side, then working through stuff on the offensive line, new quarterbacks, big time receivers not practicing. All that does matter, but I I kind of felt that this defense had a different confidence about it even before like we started to get intel on what was actually happening in practice. And then it just sort of carried through once we actually got to watch them on the field, and then certainly in the spring game on Saturday. And I think there's a lot of like what's going on with the offense. Like I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for Ohio State's defense to be ahead of the offense right now, because I don't think the offense is going to be bad. It might be different. It might look a little different, but I don't think it's going to be bad. I just trust that with Ryan Day. Meanwhile, like the year two and the system stuff that you hear about the defense, like I buy that more and more. They just seem much more comfortable. Like I thought they were flying around, man, on Saturday in a way that we haven't seen a lot from this defense over the last couple of years. And it was just really encouraging. So there are more specifics probably to get into within that, but just overall, I think the defense is in a really good place coming out of the spring.
I think that it's easy to say this in hindsight, I guess, certainly easier, but we laughed at times, like somebody going to ask Jim Knowles how much of his defense is in, like what percentage, what number is he going to say? And he never said 100. And like, we could joke about that. Oh, how do you know it's only 75? Or how do you know that it's 33% at this point and that point? Like, maybe we should have taken that more seriously in terms of what that means for guys learning it and then executing it on the field. Like, I think you mentioned it there was the second part of that breakdown, like being more comfortable in what that means for in a safety driven defense, but what that means for those guys who are actually the safeties, like Lathan Ransom and Josh Proctor and Cameron Martinez or Sonny Styles or Kai Stokes or anybody else. I think that it was probably more complicated than maybe we thought it was going to be for them. It's not meant as an excuse. They were already an improved defense. They went up, and you can pick whatever stat you want. We know what happened against Michigan and Georgia in the second half or the fourth quarter of those games. But going up to 10th in the country in stop rate as one stat that I know that Jim Knowles is proud about, he put it on his coaching clinic presentation on Thursday night, was a marked sign of improvement for Ohio State's defense. They were better last year. To get to be a finished product and have 100% of Jim Knowles' defense in after year one was probably not likely. I don't even know if that's what you get after year two or how long that takes. He had said when he got here a year ago, he knew that the job was to come make improvements so that Ohio State could win a national championship and that he didn't have 4 years. And that checked a lot of the boxes. We were impressed with that mentality. He knew it was going to have to be fast. But that just because you don't have 4 years doesn't mean that you can necessarily do it in one. Mm-hmm. And it didn't get all the way there. And will it now with another offseason, another spring, another training camp? We're probably going to see something that more closely resembles that now. At least that's what I think may happen.
I think it will too. And the big thing is the big plays, right? But even if I don't think he'll ever get to 100% of the defense, because there are probably things in his playbook that just don't suit what works for Ohio State's players. But even if he had 70% of the defense in last year, to pick a number out of thin air, and he still has 70% of the defense in this year, those guys that played last year are going to be way better at running the 70% of the defense. So I think that's what matters more than like how much defense is available to them. It's how much better these players are in whatever they decide to pick and choose out of that playbook. And I think that's where you're going to see the improvement. I just thought like the secondary in particular just always kind of seemed to show up in the right spot on Saturday. There were a couple miscues at linebacker, but nothing that was like glaring or like repetitive. Like the things that did pop up was like a thing here, a thing there. That was kind of it. And again, like it comes with the caveat that like the offense is still a work in progress, but I still think there's stuff to take from that with the defense taking a step forward. So what that means, like top 10, top 5, number 1, whatever, I don't know what they want to be. Good enough, I think is really all that matters. And I think they're in a good spot, at least coming out of the spring. We'll see if it can carry over into the summer.
Yeah, I think what you need to see is more connectivity between the corners and safeties. I think there were games where it was almost like you cut the season in half last year, and the corners were injured and really struggling for the first 6 games. And at that point we were like, oh, Ronnie Hickman and Lathan Ransom are really playing well. like the safeties aren't an issue here. And Tanner McAllister's doing his thing, and he knows the defense. And then they kind of flipped it in the second half. The corners got healthier. They played better. The safeties took a step back. I don't know what that necessarily means other than the fact that if they're all healthy and they're all familiar with the system and Jim Knowles is able to put more on their plate, like that should make this defense pretty salty. Because like you can just see a clear difference in Denzel Burke right now. And having a healthy Jordan Hancock and then adding Davison Igbinosun in there, like we already have a little body of work to sort of go off on the safeties, but the corners were, even someone like Denzel, who's been here for 2 years, it wasn't the same guy. It was hard to project out what that would mean for the secondary moving forward. So if they can both be playing together, and they're doing some of that, I understand like the way that they're structuring, with Tim Walton's title and the way they want to meet and having them together to understand the big picture. We'll see how that all translates and whether it works or doesn't work, but need 5 or 6 guys who are understanding everything and playing at a high level at the same time to be a national championship defense. That didn't happen a year ago. There are various explanations for why, but it felt like a more connected group this spring. And we'll see once real opponents are out there or a healthy Ohio State wide receiving core, how much that translates. But more than the front 7, or however we want to do the math, like just the way the secondary played together and the way that they respond, that sort of chemistry, I don't feel like that ever existed last year.
I don't either. And I think within that conversation, there is still room for the pieces to change a little bit. Like when Jahad Carter is healthy and back, what does that mean? I feel even more strongly now that Sonny Styles can make a push to be more than just like the big nickel for the first team defense, which is what we saw him do on Saturday. I guess I would buy a little bit of stock in that idea if I want to transition to something different. Like, I thought Sonny was good when they had him playing in the deep half on Saturday. He was good up near the line of scrimmage, pretty good in coverage at times. Just like I thought showed a versatility that you knew was there, but it was just nice to see it kind of on full display over the course of a pseudo game, I suppose. And I don't have a great idea of what that will look like. All I know is that I feel like a little stronger in my conviction that he needs to be a major part of what they do defensively. It doesn't necessarily mean start, although please sign me up for that. It just means like he can't be standing on the sideline for an entire game. Like he needs to be part of the plan in some way, shape, or form. I just thought he looked like very comfortable and explosive and different. And I think they need to embrace more their like different freaky athletic guys and put them on the field and find something for them to do.
Yeah. If anybody on that coaching staff was hoping that Saturday would diminish the excitement around Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks and their potential in the Ohio State defense, tough luck on that one.
Yeah. Did not happen. Yeah.
Because the arrow is still pointing up in the positive direction for those two. And Sonny's situation is different than, CJ Hicks. Like he's already going to be a factor in that sort of top end rotation. He has, they called it streamlined. We're going to have to assume that what they meant by that was he's got the big nickel role already and he can learn how to do that and get really good at it. And if something grows beyond that, we'll see in August and into September or beyond what happens there. And some of that would then be tied to the way that Josh Proctor plays in training camp and against Indiana and what Ohio State then needs to do from there. But Sonny is already in that mix. So when Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers are back at linebacker for Ohio State, and then Cody Simon seems to be the third one, it's still harder for me right now to sit here and envision what exactly that means for CJ Hicks, because we saw him play really well. He got a lot of reps, and he almost had his hands on a couple footballs on Saturday in the scrimmage. Like, that he could be really good. If the situation was that you had to play right now, I don't think Ohio State would worry about having to put him in the game. But is there really going to be a world where they don't play 2 All-American caliber linebackers 95% of the time? I'm probably more skeptical of that.
Yeah, I think I would maybe separate Tommy and Steele a little bit. And like I think Steele is a very good player, and as I've said many times, I feel like he gets better every time I watch him as he gets more and more comfortable there. But I don't know, like I don't know if I want CJ to like be the Mike linebacker like Tommy is, and like making those calls and having to really be able to kind of like be a discerning player. And meanwhile, like if you're the Will, I think you're a little more freedom, like playing space, that kind of stuff. And like CJ is just like a bigger, faster version of Steele. So I now like the perspective matters and the experience matters for Steele, and I think that's where he has a leg up on CJ at the moment. But I think there's a world where the two of them can coexist a little bit, and it doesn't have to be 50-50. It can be whatever, 70-30 in favor of Steele. But I would hope that there's room for CJ to get on the field a little bit in that kind of capacity. I don't know if you take Tommy off the field. He's like the heart and soul of your defense. I think you leave him out there as much as you can. But I view Steele. I do view Steele a little differently. How does Cody factor in that? Like I don't know. Like I think he deserves to play, right? He's been really good the last year or so. Made like a nice bounce back from his first year starting in 2021. So maybe he needs to rotate into. I'm not sure. I think it's to everyone's benefit. And Jim Knowles said this at the beginning of spring. Like maybe you play Tommy and Steele just a little bit less, if anything, to keep them fresh for the end of the year. And now, if you do that, I think if you take Cody Simon and CJ Hicks, and honestly, maybe even Gabe Powers, and perhaps to a lesser extent Reed Carrico, I think you feel pretty good about your ability to put those guys in there without suffering a lot of drop off. And like suddenly I'm thinking of the linebacker position. I might have said this on Saturday, is like much more of a deep room than perhaps I gave it credit for going into spring.
And dramatically deeper, in my opinion, than it was last year. I don't think you could imagine, like, and Jim Knowles probably couldn't. What would happen if you took those top two guys off the field? It wouldn't have probably looked very pretty. So they were known quantities. They were veterans. They took pretty quickly to the system. And maybe that's why we saw 99% of the snaps go to Tommy Eichenberg and 85 to 90 to Steele Chambers. Maybe in year two, with more depth and with more understanding and familiarity for the younger guys and what they could do, maybe that won't be the case. Maybe we will see Jim Knowles rotate more at linebacker than he did a year ago. That's probably a reasonable expectation to have. Who knows? I think the opportunity is there for them to do that. And I know that you and Burma both said, like, with somebody like CJ, you have to do it, or else the long-term consequences could be severe. So those aren't the kind of, like, do it or else you're going to lose these guys conversations that I think are fun to have, or sometimes even realistic, but you can't squander, he's going to be gone after the third year. If you only got one, like, you look back and like, well, how did that happen with Malik Hooker? Like, Darren Lee, don't you regret that? Well, sometimes there are reasons that it doesn't happen, but CJ Hicks is healthy and he doesn't have anything holding him back except good players ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, it can't happen. Like for a guy who is healthy and that athletic, it's just like to waste 2 years, I guess, of a guy like that just is a little bit unfathomable. So I feel a little bit better that they're not going to let that go to waste, whether it's mixing him in more at linebacker or letting him like kind of pin his ears back and like play a version of the jack position on passing downs. I think there's going to be something for CJ in this defense in 2023, and something for Sonny too. I think I pair the two together because they're 5-star Ohioans, but I think it was like before I felt like I was pairing them together and it was like a little unfair to CJ because the situations were vastly different. The situations are still different, but I feel a little bit better about kind of lumping them together based on what we've seen this spring.
Okay. Well, that's the secondary and the linebackers.
Mm-hmm. We talked about D-line on Monday.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. I'll just like, I would like to buy more Mike Hall stock. I bought some yesterday. Can I buy some today? Is there any more available?
Yeah, they just had another public offering on it.
Great. I'll take some of that, please. That guy is a monster. Like, if he is, like, knock on wood, healthy, and then 2 gets to actually play starter reps, like, I think he can be an All-American. He's that good and he's that disruptive. They've had some really good 3 techniques at Ohio State, and you've mentioned them before. I think Mike's ceiling is higher than all of them. Like he is just a totally disruptive like phenom when he is going at 100%, and it's a real sight to see. I enjoy watching him play football. I hope we get to see it a lot in the fall.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about Mike Hall is that it looks like he was born to play that position, and a lot of where Ohio State has had its success and Larry Johnson's success with that position, one of his favorites to use is like, I'm going to make this guy who's an edge rusher and fancies himself as a defensive end, I'm going to make him an NFL 3 technique. Like, you're going to kick inside, and that's where you're Jayshon Cornell, you were a 5-star, didn't connect, watch this. Like, I'm going to put you in situations where you can thrive. And it's like more out of necessity and creativity. That's not the case for Mike Hall. Like, he is, you build a prototype 3 technique, and then they spit out Mike Hall. And you're like, oh, wow. Okay. It is that easy. Amazing. Okay. I remember just seeing him during some of the pregame stuff in the first couple of weeks of the season and being blown away the way that he used his hands just in drills and like the power and quickness there. And then he also like drape a towel over his head and look like Mike Tyson. And I can't get it out of my head. Like, that's what was, missing, I think, from if the Rushmen didn't get that fully tap into their potential and impact the games the way they wanted to late in the year. I think it was because Mike Hall is so clearly their most disruptive force at either inside position. And once you just have that back, and as you said, you knock on wood, if Ohio State has that, I mean, he is a game wrecker, just period.
Yeah, and it makes, like, to the point of the defense being improved this year, like a guy like that makes everybody better. It just speeds up the process for every quarterback you face and makes mistakes that much more likely if you're in the secondary or you're a linebacker, or if you're playing against the run and you're a linebacker, like Mike Hall can make you right if you're wrong. He's just that good. So we knew he was good, right? Because like the flashes last year were sort of unlike anything we've seen before from a player that young at that position. But something about like just seeing him from the jump this spring was like, where did this come from? Like, this guy is an alien, my Lord. So I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like, but if he's getting, let's call it 40 snaps a game, I guess, like, yeah, he's going to be, I think, not just the talk of the town here in Columbus, but across college football. I think he's that much of a difference maker.
Well, they say he's the LeBron James of Streetsboro. So
it doesn't get any bigger than that. I've been to Streetsboro. If you're the LeBron James of Streetsboro, you're doing something.
I think that if we rewind back to stocks that I would have been buying going into camp and who was going to help it to elevate the pass rush on the edge, I don't think I'm alone, but my markers would have been on Caden Curry, and Kenyatta Jackson, I think, was probably overlooked by just my own portfolio. Did not have enough Kenyatta Jackson in it. I will definitely be rectifying that situation in any way that I can. I don't know that any name was said over the microphone and in the speakers in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center more in March and April than Kenyatta Jackson's. Again, usual spring caveats and grains of salt. Not every rep was against a starting, proven veteran offensive tackle. So that's part of it. That's part of the evaluation and trying to figure it out. But just heard enough from other teammates and coaching staff and everybody else just about him understanding the practice habits and then adding another year of development to. I mean, he already had pure raw athleticism, got that kind of long reach and long arms, and then you put more power inside of that, and then figuring out how to consistently practice at the level that it takes at Ohio State. All those things are lining up for him. Nothing is guaranteed just because you are good in spring scrimmages or a spring game and you're able to tag the quarterback, but he's just got a lot of things that are flashing over his head that say Ohio State's got one here. And if there were concerns about maybe the depth and rotation at defensive end, it's not a knock on Caden Curry. It wasn't a knock on a healthy Amari Abor. They both did things when they were able to that were impressive in their own right, but I don't think anybody did it on a more regular basis than Kenyatta Jackson.
Ryan Day said his name a lot and oftentimes unprovoked. Like Kenyatta Jackson was front of mind for Ryan Day for the majority of the spring, and that's not nothing. There were back-to-back plays on Saturday where he was going against Josh Fryer, who is not the most experienced guy in the world, but I think from a talent standpoint, like he's a Big Ten offensive lineman, like ready to be a starting Big Ten offensive lineman. And on the first play, Kenyatta hit him with an inside hand. It was like I remember Joey Bosa, gosh, I don't know, 8 years ago now, talking about there's a place on a in the inside of an offensive lineman where you can hit him and he'll tip over. It's like tipping cows. It's like this is where you hit the guy and he'll fall over. And Kenyatta did that with Josh. Josh didn't fall, but he stumbled and almost fell. And then on the next play, it was almost like Kenyatta set it up. Like he faked inside, he got Josh to lean a little bit, and then he ripped through and beat him around the edge. I don't think he got a sack either time. One of them might have been like a forced incompletion, and the other one, I don't know, the play might have been blown dead before he could get his tap on the hip sack. But I thought it was pretty savvy to see him kind of set up moves that way. And I was really eager to see that against Josh Fryer, who I think is the best test that Ohio State could throw out for a young lineman like Kenyatta in that kind of setting. So yeah, I'm all in. I have been for a while. I think the hype is very much real. I think Ohio State needs it. And I don't know, like JT Tuimoloau, excuse me, is very much still like the focal point on the edges there, and deservedly so. But if you can throw another guy out there opposite him that really threatens a defense, whether that's Kenyatta or Jack, or if Caden Curry keeps coming along, this defensive line I think could be pretty special. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I feel probably as good as I felt about an Ohio State defensive line going into like the stretch between spring and the summer. I don't know, as I felt since like going back to like 2017 when they had that like Nick Bosa, Sam Hubbard kind of group. So I think it'll be pretty solid.
Yeah, that's what they've been trying to recapture ever since, is being able to rotate 4 or 5 guys who all are NFL caliber and have that matching level of productivity while they're still at Ohio State. I don't think they've got quite back to that. The pieces have been there. The potential has been there. It hasn't worked as flawlessly. Does help if like some of them are generational prospects, like a Nick Bosa or a Chase Young. I think that probably does elevate and take some pressure off the others. I'm going to state the obvious there, but JT is pretty special. So if he's able to, be that ringleader and command the attention, that only is going to make Jack Sawyer more productive. It's going to open up more opportunities for Kenyatta Jackson or Caden Curry or Amari Abor, and that becomes whatever eightfold if Mike Hall is also causing mischief on the interior, because then what do you do? I don't know how you defend that or how you block that.
Yeah, maybe Ohio State's offensive line is awesome, and we just don't know it yet because their defensive line is that much better.
Now we've got there. Yeah. I mean, I have said that, like, it's unfair to them, and it's not uncommon to watch an Ohio State spring camp, not just one practice or scrimmage, and be like, what's wrong with the offensive line? Oh, well, that's Chase Young, and that's Sam Hubbard, and that's Tyquan Lewis, and Joey Bosa, and Nick Bosa. It's no wonder that they're losing reps, because nobody's going to beat them anyway.
I think that is a percentage of what is happening with the offensive line. The question is how much?
How much?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, which I think is what has people uneasy. We've talked a lot of defense. I want to mention one offensive thing I'm buying stock in. It's Chip Trainum, who I thought was just going to get like the night train. When they said Chip's at running back now, my initial reaction was, like he's going to get lost, because this is what happens to guys like that. He's pretty good. I don't know at all how this is going to work for Tony Alford and how he's going to divvy all this out. And frankly, I'm not even going to try to figure it out, because they don't pay me enough to do that. That's why Tony gets paid a lot of money to figure that out. But Chip's a solid running back, and his speed at that size is a difference maker. And I believe that Ohio State is going to find a way to utilize it.
I remember a year ago at this time being like really enamored by what he could become, at linebacker. It seemed like he was going to take to that quickly and have the same sort of trajectory as Steel Chambers. So I guess what it boils down to is that Chip Trayanum is just really good at football. Mm-hmm. And sometimes being a good football player without a position winds up being a problem for contributing in a regular way at Ohio State. If you can do too many things, then it becomes almost impossible for Ohio State to determine what one thing that you should do regularly. And that may still happen with him at running back, even as good as we've seen him be, because I don't think he's going to supplant Travion Henderson at the top of the depth chart when that guy's healthy. I don't know that he's going there are some things that Chip Trayanum does that are going to be similar and remind people of a healthy Mayan Williams. So I don't know how that works. As you said, that's the what is it now, $780,000 question that Tony Alford has to figure out. I don't envy him for it, because those guys are all really good players, and that's why I kind of thought if Chip carved his own role out going into camp, and playing some tight end or in that fullback role, that would be an evolutionary version of Mitch Rossi, but that's underselling how good Chip Trayanum is at running back. So I can no longer, in good conscience, advocate for that move, even if it would be amazing to see, because he deserves to play at running back. That's the situation.
I would like to buy a little bit of stock in the idea of Ohio State finally using two running backs at the same time, somewhat regularly. Maybe regularly is too strong, but as a part of the plan, to help a young quarterback, to help a newish offensive line. I think you're going to see a lot of multi-tight end and a lot of two-back, or a decent amount of two-back, and really relying on that run game early on. And I actually think, now if we got to this point, it's a really good thing they have so much firepower at running back, because I think they're going to need it. Also, Jim Knowles in the past has described the ideal candidate for the jack position as someone who is maybe not quite right for linebacker. Maybe he's a high school running back. Maybe he doesn't fit either of those position coaches' idea of what's needed in that position. So we just put him at the jack, and he's a football player. So,
no. He got it there, folks. He did it.
I mean, honestly, the description that Jim Knowles has laid out there for the ideal jack candidate, no one fits that better than Chip Trayanum. I don't think he's going to do it. I don't think I would actually do it with him, but he is a football player.
So in the span of a year, he's worked at linebacker. He, for some reason, was given a role for a while as a kickoff returner. Mm-hmm. He's now a running back. I have suggested that he play fullback or tight end. And now you have brought it all the way back onto the defensive side and made Chip Trayanum a jack up. This guy, what more? That's the highest football guy praise you can get. The guy could play pretty much any position. Could he play right tackle? Maybe that's a bridge too far, but I wouldn't bet against him.
I think he could give you a couple good reps.
Yeah, not a full game. No. He's going to go win some battles. Yeah. We've seen him block. He's really impressive in those blocking drills where Tony Alford gets those huge bags, and all right. Well, we did there. That was a wild journey and a wild episode for just the two of us on the podcast daily for a Tuesday. The transition into the summer off season is the worst. I wish we could just keep talking about spring ball, and we'll find ways, I think, for the next couple of weeks anyway. Probably have to go back and go position by position. And what we learned there, and think back about those 15 workouts, but we're not getting them back. Buckeyes don't get extra practices, unfortunately. So we'll work with what we have, and we'll keep coming with new podcast dailies every day throughout the off season until we finally have something new to talk about again. For Bill, I am Austin. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. If you want to do so at ohiostate.rivals.com, ohiostate.rivals.com, you can do so using the code DTE30 and get a free month. Either way, that's it for this one. We'll talk to you later.